Welcome again to It Doesn't Take a Genius, conversation with introspective perspectives and pithy points of view. Here are your hosts, my friends, Max and Marty.
I think that's Mark and Mike.
Yeah, whatever.
Ramsey!
Marshall, how are we today?
I'm hungover, man. Whew.
Hungover?
Oh, I have a learning hangover from episode 104.
Right.
Our 2-year anniversary episode with Lynn, the John Wooden coach disciple. Just so much good stuff. I think I might have hurt my brain.
Well, and our listeners, both of them, don't know that we talked to Lynn for about 15 minutes beforehand, and then we probably talked to him another half hour to an hour afterwards.
Oh, yeah.
So just an absolute download of wisdom that we are still grappling with, aren't we?
Oh, yeah. When it comes to John Wooden and Lynn, we have a saying in Indiana, the boys ate up with it. So, he's such a passionate disciple for the coach. So,
and here we are today still talking about it. So you were especially struck by something. Do you want to share sort of what you want to bring to the table today?
Oh, yeah, just a quote from one of the books that Lynn recommended, which was the book Wooden. And Coach writes in the book, he says, being a role model is the most powerful form of educating. And it's like, okay, I've heard this before. I think in 1942, I think Gandhi said, my life is my message.
Mm-hmm.
And Coach goes, Coach Wooden goes into, to deeper and says, listen, you can't, this idea that you're asking people to do something that you're not willing to do is just completely ludicrous. It's not a way to lead. It's not a way to coach. It's not a way to change behavior.
Yeah. And, my mother grew up with the saying and shared it with us, be careful, little eyes are upon you. I can't remember if it was while we were recording or not, but apparently Coach Wooden had a long form poem on his desk with a picture of a kid following in his father's footsteps up the beach, with the same general principle behind it. And of course, it might be little eyes upon you. It might be your neighbor's eyes upon you. It might be your community's eyes upon you. And it might be your employees' eyes upon you.
Yeah,
so here we are.
Your team members are watching. I love that old quote. What you're doing speaks so loudly, I can't hear what you're saying.
Right. Right.
We had, I may have had the fortunate experience of parents who use the do what I say, not what I do, kind of thing. And it's weird because I think it's one of these things that's just inherent in humans, that we see the dissonance between what's being said and what's being done. Even as a kid, right, I would go to the doctor, and I had an old school doctor, local town practitioner, and he was overweight and he smoked. And he was telling me these healthy things I should be doing.
Right.
Like,
right.
Well, I'm just a
kid.
You
don't do them.
Yeah, this is not making any sense to me. You're the professional in this particular realm. And I don't want to get hate mail from people who are big boned. So I'll use the other example that we used to hear was never trust a skinny chef.
Absolutely.
So yeah, okay, if you're not eating it, why should I eat it? So this, my life is my message. The role model is the greatest form of education. And when you look at Coach Wooden, some of the things he talked about, right? He never used profanity while coaching. And in this day and age of coaching, it seems
that's
like
how it's done.
It's a given at this point. And the reason was very simple. I don't want my players using these words, so I don't use these words.
Yeah.
we talk about this from a leadership standpoint. We talk about customer service, and we go, it would never be acceptable for a team member to yell at a customer.
Right.
And yet somehow we think it's okay for the manager to yell at the team member. Like, no, that's, the message is so mixed, and we wonder why. Okay, why is there people who aren't getting on board? Why do they not fit our culture? And if I'm sending conflicting a message about what our culture truly is, they're never going to get fully on board.
Well, that's why we have spent so much time in the podcast and, me on my blog and both of us in our work talking about culture, because culture is what you trickle downhill. So, we've used in many clients' workplaces the service profit chain, and the idea that the most profitable companies are the ones that invest on the front end in how they treat their people, so that their people can invest in how they give a customer experience. It's all trickling downhill. And there are some companies, and I've worked with some of them over the years, that, it was a do as I say, not as I do culture. And there was always some little fly in the ointment all the way through the entire process, where people were on edge or cynical, or, something that showed that they knew that they weren't receiving what they were supposed to be giving. And they had to wrestle with that internally. Then there are these other cultures I've worked with where it's just this thing of beauty, right? Like, they're not the smartest people. They're not the richest people. They don't have all the resources, but they know that that person up at the top is a woman of integrity, and she's going to treat us right, and we can treat our people right. And they look to her as an example. Mm-hmm. It's almost like a role model.
Oh yeah. Well, I think about just from my own life. My mom was I'm not sure she even graduated, but she didn't graduate from high school. She went back and got her GED much later in life.
Awesome.
She was a voracious reader. So she was an incredibly educated person, self-educated, and she literally had a book in every room of our house. And most of my memories of my mom, when I think back, one of them I can picture clearly is she would be asleep on the couch. There would be a book laying on her chest, and her glasses would be all crooked because she'd fallen asleep reading. And my brother and I were both big readers. Mm-hmm. And she said, she goes, I don't even remember when you boys learned to read. It was like you always could read.
You could just always do it. Yeah.
Yeah. And and there was books, and there was the example. And so nobody, sat us down and said, if you're going to get anywhere in life, you got to read. It was just, this is what you do if you live in this house. This is how life works. Yeah. This house requires reading. Yep. Seems to be the price of food and shelter. So, and it's the norm. And so when you think about this as a leader, the immediate payoff, when you think about why this is tough to do, the short-term payoff of this is just very hard to measure, impossible to measure. Me not cussing at work, pays off in a better customer experience down the road someplace.
Down the road,
But what percentage of that customer satisfaction score can I attribute to the manner in which I speak to my employees?
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah. And that's, it's a good point about, sort of kids being, a great illustration of how this all works, because we do see the short-term benefit. I remember, we read to our children, my oldest is 11. But I don't remember exactly when it switched over to her just saying, I need another book. And she's hoovered up everything in our house, everything that we would allow her to read. She's read all the Laura Ingalls Wilder Little House books. Wow. She's about to finish off all the Paddington Bear books. She's read C.S. Lewis. She's, we could go through the list of all the things that are, book series that are, kind of, novels for kids to get through. And she has plowed through all of them. Oh, the Anne of Green Gables books. That was the other one. That's kind of even old fashioned writing. and she's read all of them.
Yeah, those are tough. Yeah,
it's
and
weird.
Don't forget, she's also made her way through the Harry Hugger series.
She has made her way through the Harry Hugger series, which we'll link to in the show notes. Don't you worry about that.
Oh yeah. Blatant, self-promoting plug right there.
Well, let me give you a non-reading example that just happened this week. My youngest is 5, and she's watched 3 older siblings on the bicycle, right? And I don't know, like I guess it just struck her. I think it was Monday. They're riding up and down the driveway, and I said, you ought to get off the training wheels, Veronica, and ride the balance bike. There's a Seth Godin episode about this. I think, Mike, you may remember that he talks about how the hipsters are right. The balance bike with no pedals, that's the way to teach a kid to ride a bike.
Right.
And somebody gave us one, and doggone it, they're right. The millennials had it on this one. They're just, millennials were all over it. So I get her to put it, put her legs over it, and she goes up and down, and then she sort of like has this one moment where her feet kick up in the air, and she's like, oh, it's working. And she comes back, and I said, hey, I think you're doing it. And she said, well, can you go ahead and take the training wheels off? Like, oh, off your real bike with pedals? Yeah. Can you take those off? I'm like, oh, well, I guess I can. And doggone if her older brother, Simon, just gets next to her, and he just starts showing her, this is how I do it, Veronica. Burpee, burpee, burpee. And she did not fall. Like, she just took off. It was done. And now by the end of the day, there were a lot of bruises on her legs, but like never anything terrible. She just took off, and like, she knows how to bike. She knows how to steer. She like the whole thing. And it was really her brother modeling it.
And the most important part is you weren't running behind her dying. Right. Yeah, this is the best part. Right? If I do this well, then I don't have to kill myself for running behind the child for the next 3 months.
That's the secret to families with a lot of kids. Delegated parenting.
Oh yeah, yeah. Teach your sister something. Yeah. Run behind her, whatever it takes. Yeah, it's your sister. Well, I mean, that's so important. And you get to examples like that, and I think of an example of, humility, where I have a store owner, multi-million-dollar, businessman, and he stands in front of his team and he says, here's what I'd like to do, and I have no idea how to do it. Can you help me?
Yep.
And and of course, we solve the problem. Everybody leans in, and you want to help somebody like that. And at the same time, the setting of the example that it's okay to stand in front of your team,
huge,
even though you have the title, and say, I don't know what to do next. I don't know how to proceed. What do you guys think?
That's how we won the Battle of the Bulge.
No.
General, I think the first name was Terry. General Terry Nuts McAuliffe. He was known as Nuts McAuliffe the rest of his life. He, the legend, the legendary heroic story is that the Germans officially ask for a surrender, and they send back one word, nuts. And, that's how you say it, right? Like, nuts. Yeah. Well, I saw an interview of one of his command staff. They're all holed up, in the bulge, completely under siege. And, the message comes in from the Germans, and the general, behind closed doors with his staff, apparently just sort of scratched his head and said, oh, nuts. And they're like, I don't know what to do. And somebody goes, hey, maybe that's it. And I think he was like, maybe like he was like a captain at the time, maybe that's it, Captain. What? Let's just send that back. Let's send back nuts. And it became this galvanizing moment, that just, took us over the edge. So, that wasn't his heroism and his coolness. That was him acknowledging, I don't know what to do. And his staff were on it. They took that and ran with it.
Oh, that is priceless. Just absolutely priceless. And so, the store owner, and even that commander, he will never know the impact that that moment had,
Right.
I most likely won't, the store owner most likely won't be there when the manager stands in front of his people and says, hey, listen, we're struggling with this. What do you think? What can we do?
Yeah.
He'll probably never see the end product of I was this, and then it was emulated within my organization. And and that may be what makes this so difficult, is that you have to do it purely based on faith.
Oof.
I just got to have faith that me doing the right thing will ultimately lead to more people doing the right thing.
Yeah. Yeah. We're back to talking about purpose and meaning and something beyond the organization, something beyond yourself. I think that's why it worked so well for Wooden, right? I mean, it was truly a faith. It was, the goal here for me is to stand before Jesus. I want to be able to do that with having made impact that's eternal impact. And that's why, Len told us the story about how, what he really valued in terms of photographs of himself was him with all of his players, when he was in his 90s, a picture with all of them. It was about making that impact. So, I don't know. I feel like we probably ought to bring this plane in for a landing. And this is a hard one to sort of leave you with a real practical, like, here's the 3-point plan for being a role model.
It is very difficult, but the coach can help us out.
Perfect.
One more
This
quote.
is why we don't script this stuff, Mike. Go for it.
Thank you very much. So the coach writes, perhaps you fret and think you can't make a difference in the way things are. Wrong. You can make the biggest difference of all. You can change yourself.
That's so good.
Yeah. I think Michael Jackson said, the man in the mirror.
Right.
So start with that guy. Start with the man in the mirror, and maybe the assignment here, the quest, the challenge, the opportunity here is just to think about what is the one thing that you do that's not aligned with the culture that you want. That's it. What is that one thing? It might just be a small thing. Maybe it's starting your meetings on time. You ask everybody else to be punctual, but your meetings always start a few minutes late. Just make that concerted effort. I'm going to start my meetings on time.
Yeah.
And know that message will be the one that when I say we should all be on time, we should never keeping people waiting is something we don't do here. I'm going to make a concerted effort to do that. Yeah. So not life-changing stuff, just this, here's a small element that is in conflict with what we say. I'm going to go tackle that one.
Love it. We've all had parents or guardians who in some way were hypocritical on something. I think like you can't not be a kid and not eventually know, hey, they say this, but they did this, even if it's in the short term. And the best parents figure that out and call themselves out and correct that. So, if you can see it from that perspective of you being a kid and remembering what it was like, maybe that can help you look at yourself in the mirror and figure out what it is at work that would be against the culture you're trying to make. Love that. Work on yourself.
Yep. Trust me, there's a lot of opportunity here.
Huge amounts for me.
Yes.
Huge.
Yeah. If I was listening to the classified, it would say fixer upper, handyman dream, has potential. So, yeah. Speaking of somebody who believes that we're imperfect, let's go to our announcer. I spoke with him the other day, and we may be getting some new intros and outros. I think
I heard that, and I could not be more excited or scared.
Yeah, I think he's excited about making more fun of us. So there's that. Take it away, John.
And there you have it, another session of contemporaneous extemporizing from Mark and Mike. I know it's redundant, but consider who we're talking about. As always, feel free to share the ideas you heard here. No rights are reserved, no permissions needed. Thanks. See you next time on It Doesn't Take a Genius.
That's good enough.